Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm glad that you could join me again today here on Hessan's County. Today, we're going to be doing a TTRPG Talk. This series takes a look at tabletop role-playing games, related materials, makes some suggestions for your own games, and takes a look at some of my own materials. Today, we're going to be doing a look at some work by Ennead Games. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Ennead Games, they are a group that creates a whole bunch of different generators, as you can see here. Oodles and oodles and oodles of them for your various world building, fiction, or TTRPG creations. I have actually featured some work by Ennead Games previously, specifically their ones that were related to creating pantheons. Today specifically we're going to be taking a look at the Knightly Order overview, which primarily creates a specific knight who is a member of this order and also gives you some information on the Knightly Order itself. This is in part because I am looking into creating a game that is related to the Pendragon series of games, and probably more inspired by actually its its sort of spin-off successor game related to Charlemagne, which I believe is called Paladin, if I'm remembering the name correctly, where basically you play knights who are either in or associated with the in the case of Pendragon, in the court associated with the Arthur, King Arthur in Camelot, but in the Paladin game, which if I am remembering that name correctly, you're playing knights associated with the court of Charlemagne. So let's go ahead and get started. For this particular table, for the tables that are on this particular generator, we're primarily only going to be utilizing D20s, D10s, and D100s. So this will be pretty simple. There are a couple of items that you see here that we are not going to be using. I am not going to be using, for example, colors or and probably not a symbol for my knight. This is because I actually already have some heraldry generators, and I generally actually like following the traditional rules of heraldry when it comes to like colors and things and how they match and stuff like that. So generators generally aren't very good at creating heraldry that's actually like follows Heldrake rules. Let's put it that way. So instead, I'm just going to be primarily focusing on some other elements. I'm also just going to go through them in order that you see here on the page. These are in alphabetical order, so it might not necessarily make sense as an order to roll them if you're just looking for little bits and pieces to pull out to create a basic description of a knight or the order itself. But this is just a simple way for me to keep track and make sure that I actually do everything I want to do. So all right, so here we go. The first aspect we're going to be rolling is the typical armor, and if my knight uses a shield, and then also the one after this should be the general condition of their equipment. So this would be basically tables that you would probably want to have whenever you are like creating a knightly character that your characters might be encountering on a campaign for the very first time, and you need to roll up real quick what their basic description of their appearance would be. Since obviously, especially for like a knight fighter type of fighter or paladin type of knight would obviously have a lot of their armor and equipment makes up a lot of their basic appearance and personality, at least initially as you might encounter them. So for this, they want us to roll a D100. I rolled a 31, so our knight is going to primarily utilize chainmail and generally would not use a shield. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. The next thing here we're going to roll here is the basic condition of their equipment. So again, here they want me to roll a D20 this time. And I rolled a 6. So their equipment is generally in good condition with just some basic wear or scuff marks. Now, the next one that we have here is actually something that we would generally be using to describe the order that we're going to be creating. So here we're going to be doing the sort of goal or mandate of the order. Obviously, as you may remember, a lot of the The knightly orders that existed in the past had a general objective that they were generally founded around doing. For example, like the Knights Templar were to protect pilgrims, right? The Knights Hospitaller were founded in order to help the sick and needy and the poor, especially on pilgrimages and stuff like that. So let's see what ours is. Okay, I rolled an 8. So that means the goal or mandate of our order is financial acquisition. Which makes me very curious on what exactly they are acquiring all this wealth for. I very much doubt they're basically like the knightly order of the Ferengi. So maybe one of their primary goals is financial acquisition because they then turn around and use this wealth to develop something or build something or to help people or to do something along those lines. But we will need to see. All right. This might come through in the ideal. So the ideal here is going to be a basic sort of trait that a lot of the people in the knightly order are going to try to uphold. I rolled an 18, so we have strength. Okay. Now, in the next thing here, we're going to be taking a look at the basic income and wealth level of the Eldraic, or sorry, of the knightly order. So for the first one, they want me to roll a d10, and this is going to basically kind of decide what is the primary source of their wealth, and then the next one is actually going to be like the actual like level of financial assets that the order essentially has. Okay, so for the first one, I rolled a 6. So their income primarily comes from local taxes. So again, maybe their financial acquisitions are primarily because maybe this is like the IRS. Maybe their job is they're essentially the king's IRS and they're going around collecting all the taxes from everybody. We'll have to see. All right. For the wealth level, I actually rolled a 50, which here it says minor profit. So basically, it means that they are. No, actually, sorry, I rolled a 50, so it says balanced, not minor profit. Sorry. So this kind of suggests that they don't necessarily have like a huge amount of liquidity when it comes to their wealth. They have basically the amount of money that they have coming in is the amount of money they have going out, that kind of a thing. So they're not like super duper wealthy, but they're not like poor or struggling, right? Okay. So for this next one, we're going to be basically kind of setting up what kind of conditions the headquarters of this knightly order basically exists in. For this, I rolled a 7. So literally the monarch's location. So basically the headquarters of the knightly order that we're creating here, sorry. Basically the knightly order that we're creating here is the part of the monarch's order. It could be basically attached to the court, or maybe it's some sort of parallel to the court itself. We'll need to see, which that actually kind of suggests that, again, maybe I was on the right track here, where I'm kind of suggesting that maybe this is essentially like the IRS, and that yes, their goal is financial acquisition, but it's primarily to collect and protect the taxes that are being collected on behalf of the king, or the monarch of this country. So in the next thing, what they want us to do is they want us to kind of roll and get a basic idea of how many knights that this order probably has, and then also the basic number of how many, like what the ratio is between knights and sort of like the civilians, let's say, of the order. You know, all the servants and the stewards and the blacksmiths and the people who don't do the fighting, but help like maintain the order, the people who clean the horses, stuff like that. Okay, so I rolled a 79. So that means we have somewhere between 300 and 400 knights. To be specific, we have 382. And then the ratio, they want me to roll a D100 here. I rolled a 72. So the ratio is about, it says here about like 1.5. Which basically means that for every knight in the order, there's typically like 1.5 not knight people. Like I said, servants and stewards and cooks and all the people who basically help run the order but don't do the fighting. Alrighty. On this next page, we are going to be taking a look at sort of like what's the basic age of the order. When did it get started? So I'm going to roll this D100 here to see what category we're going to be picking from. So I rolled an 8. So it says here an 8 is 10d10 years. 50. So we're going to say it's about 50 years. Okay. So maybe not the current monarch, but maybe 2 or 3 monarchs ago, they basically organized this order to help them collect their taxes, or maybe the knightly order was created in order to help protect the taxes. Maybe there was something weird going on because they were being attacked or something like that. The next one, we're going to be going back to our knight up here at the top. This time we're going to be rolling for the primary weapon that our knight prefers to use. And I rolled a flail, which is rather ironic because a flail, of course, used to be a farming implement. So my guy uses a farming implement to help him collect taxes. The next section they want us to do is social standing. So this first table here, it would be roughly where in the sort of social ladder the actual order generally is. Are members generally considered to be like upper class, nobility? Are they lower middle class, lower class? Are they definitely looked down upon? Stuff like that. Then the individual variation would refer to our knight specifically into like, are they like kind of above or below or roughly equal to the general level of social standing that the order usually has. So for this one, I rolled a 38, which suggests that the members of our order are typically in an upper class, but not necessarily nobility. So in that case, that means that we're probably gentry or members of like the merchant class, about like that level. All right, our last, so here we're rolling our individual variation. I rolled a 75, which means we're roughly on the same level as the order. So again, upper class, right? Okay, for our next thing, it says we can randomize for a squire, so I guess I'll go ahead and roll that. This is just to kind of determine the basic circumstances as to how our knight and our squire met and kind of ended up working together. We can, of course, build on this from here. I rolled a 4. It says that the squire impressed the knight, and that's why they recruited them. All right, the next one they want us to do is the basic structure of the order. So the first one, they want us to roll basically what the leadership generally looks like. And then for our second one, they want us to roll on like what kind of suborders or groups exist within the larger order. For both of these, they want us to roll a D10. All right, so for leadership, I rolled a 1, which here just means that there's one leader and that's it, right? This is a very sort of autocratic organization. Maybe this person is really charismatic or something. I'm not sure. For suborders or groups, I rolled an 8. So that means we have 1d4 plus 2. So I got a d4 here. All right, I rolled a 2 on our d4 plus 2. So that means we have roughly about 4 factions within our order. Maybe each of these had different jobs. Maybe they're different regions, like chapter houses that are members of this order. They could be a number of different things. All right. So for our next one here, it says typical trait. What is one general basic descriptor that what is the stereotypical knight of this order act like, look like, all that stuff? For this, I rolled an 18, which says rigid behavior. So basically, knights who are members of this order are very strongly associated with a particular type of personality and behavior, and they generally stick to that no matter what. Whatever that is, we're not sure. Again, maybe they are really rigid in following the rules because, of course, they're collecting the king's money, so they need to be really careful about making sure they follow the rules, and they're probably kind of stingy, partly because they don't want to be seen as letting people off when it comes to collecting taxes, or maybe they're not. They don't want to be known for, being corrupt or stuff like that, which may result in a very rigid sort of behavior and sort of behavior code, let's say. That they always need to follow. The last thing they would like us to do is to kind of come up with a quirk or a rule that is well known in this order that people outside of the order would probably think to be a little strange or bizarre. So they want us to roll a d50. So I'm actually going to roll a d100 and then obviously divide by 2. So let's see, I rolled a 68, so we divide that by 2, that would be a 34, and 34 is associated with no permanent mounts. So basically, whatever sort of animal or thing that our order generally uses to get around, the animal does not belong to the knight. Instead, it belongs to the order, and the knights just pass back and forth between the various different mounts that they have. We could also potentially roll for a second one if we really wanted to. So I went ahead and did that, and I rolled a 97. The law of the lands come first. That makes sense. So basically the laws of whatever. So basically, this knight respects the local laws or the laws of whatever territory that they're in above even their own codes or stuff like that, which could be very interesting. So that was the knightly order overview. As you can see, it's pretty simple. It does help you, especially kind of in creating seeds to help you generate your what you might want your order to be kind of like. As you can see here, we've ended up creating a pretty interesting potential knightly order that we could use that is going to be primarily focused on tax collection within the kingdom, on behalf of the monarch themselves, and that they're actually like attached to the government, essentially, of this kingdom or whatever that they're in. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over real quick here in just a second to the knightly order sort of naming generator, and so we can take a look at that as well. Just so you get an example of like what one of the sort of lighter, smaller, simpler generators that Ennead Games creates might look like. Welcome back, everybody. So this is the quick generator, the knightly order names, the quick generator for knightly order names. A lot of the quick generators, again, they're very short and simple. This one is actually only 2 rolling tables, basically, and some basic directions on how you might want to use them. Basically, this is going to create a descriptor and a thing, usually, in this case, to help us kind of create the name, which we could phrase as being the one two, or one of the two, or two of the one. It could be lots of different. We could arrange it in several different ways. But this is going to create basically a two-part name to help describe our order. So here on part one, I rolled an 89. So from here, we are going to pull sun. So something sun. For part two, again, I'm going to roll a D100. And I rolled a 32, which says dragoons, which really nicely meets up with our potential, riding across the countryside on behalf of the government, collecting money and taxes and stuff in order to bring them to the monarch. So I guess based on the fact that we have dragoons and sun dragoons sounds a little strange. The sun dragoons sounds a little strange to me. So I guess we'll name them the dragoons of the sun. So for those of you who don't necessarily know what a dragoon is, just to kind of clarify what I meant earlier about how this is actually rather fitting, a dragoon was essentially a type of soldier, cavalry, who would ride on horseback but fight on foot. Typically, dragoons were originally introduced when firearms were starting to become introduced, but maybe in this particular world, it's a little bit different. So maybe these dragoons are like men-at-arms, essentially, who operate on behalf of the monarch and stuff, and they ride their horses and collect their wealth and things, and collect the taxes and things on their horses or wagons or whatever. And then they fight armored on foot, which could be kind of interesting. Again, kind of pulling into the sort of idea that these aren't necessarily like your traditional, a chivalric sort of, fancy knights riding on horseback fighting with lances sort of thing. But these are instead really sort of gritty, more down to earth, still pretty high class and obviously well respected in society, but still definitely more down to earth, literally, more practical fighters as opposed to being like, fancy pompous nobles, let's say. So thank you all again for joining me today. This was a look at some of Ennead Games' most recent generators, specifically the Nightly Order overview generator, and also the Nightly Order names generator. If you'd like to take a look at them, you can find them on itch, DriveThruRPG, and the Open Gaming Store. Let me double check that. Yes. And of course, if you want to follow Ennead Games, they are on Twitter and Instagram, and obviously they have a Patreon and a Ko-fi where you can sponsor them if you wish. I believe that does get you some free games or some free generators or some perks that I don't admittedly know the specifics of, but you can definitely check it out and find out. And again, they have their own website that also features a blog where they post some of their own suggestions, some of their own online generators, so that you don't necessarily have to use the PDF and dice on your own. For some of their most commonly used generators, some of the simpler ones can also operate that way. So thank you again for joining me today. I do hope that you generate your way to some very interesting worlds, and don't forget to rate your itch purchases. Have a good time.